The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges, Cook, Coram, Crowder, Danielson.
Majority Leader? Senator Danielson?
She's excused. She'll be there.
Excused.
Donovan, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Foote, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Hill,
Absent.
Heisey, Holbert, Lee, Lee,
Testing.
Lundeen, Marble, Moreno, Pedersen,
We have no audio.
Riola,
No, we don't. We can't hear.
Rankin,
Yeah.
Rodriguez.
Can you hear me?
I think we
Scott?
hear each other, but we can't hear the floor work.
Scott,
Yeah.
Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Story, Tate, Todd, Williams,
Present.
Winter, Woodward, Zenzinger, Mr. President.
Here. With 33 present, 1 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Members and guests, will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the approval of the journal. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal of Friday, June 5th, be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Bill 219, Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, Senate Joint Resolution 22, correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 00755 and 200, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 51, 170, 181, 185, 186, 197, and 204. Correctly revised, House Bill 1024, 1061, 1360, 1361, 1362, 1364, 1365, 1366, 1367, 1368, 1369, 1371, 1372, 1375, 1377, 1378, 1379, 1380, 1381, 1382, 1383, 1384, 1385, 1386, 1387, 1391, 1393, 1397, 1398, 1399, 1400, and 1401, correctly re-revised. House Bill 1001, 1116, 1137, 1183, 1196, 1209, 1210, 1212, 1215, 1230, 1363, 1370, 1374, 1388, 1389, 1390, 1392, 1394, 1395, and 1396.
Message from the House.
The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1211, 1402, 1404. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1290. Minutes printed in the House Journal June 1st, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1207, 1143, 1286. Minutes printed in the House Journal June 4th, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1119, 1336, 1376, 1293. Minutes printed in the House Journal June 3rd, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1184 and 1265. Minutes printed in the House Journal May 29th, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1218 and 1219. Minutes printed in the House Journal February 27th, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes House Bill 1285. Minutes printed in the House Journal May 29th, 2020. The House is passed on third reading and transmitted to the Revised Statutes Senate Bill 102. Minutes printed in the House Journal June 1st, 2020.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1211, 1402, 1404 without comment as amended House Bill 1119, 1143, 1184, 1207, 1218, 1265, 1285, 1286, 1290, 1293, 1336, 1376 without comment as amended. Senate Bill 102 without comment as amended House Bill 1219.
Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1360.
House Bill 1360 by Representative Vescar and Senator Moreno concerning the provisions for payment of the expenses of the executive, legislative, and judicial departments of the state of Colorado and of its agencies and institutions for and during the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020, except as otherwise noted.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1360 on third reading and final passage, and will just again extend my thanks to our incredible JBC staff for helping us put together a budget in what was a very difficult year. Still a couple of moving parts that we'll have to figure out here. Getting a little anxious, but will place my faith in the General Assembly that we will get it done.
Is there further discussion? Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did not get an opportunity yesterday to really talk about my thoughts about this budget, so I just wanted to offer up a little bit of perspective. I really am honored to be able to present to you today what I believe to be the most difficult piece of legislation that I've ever had the privilege of working on. I don't particularly love this budget. It isn't pretty. But in its pages, what you will find are some difficult choices. You're going to find some shared sacrifice. You're going to find uncomfortable reductions. You're going to find persistent questions. You're going to find tearful discussions. You're going to find painful recommendations. And you're going to find protections of the things that we value most. And among these pages, you're going to find some good work, too. You're going to find the names of my colleagues from both chambers, from both sides of the aisle. And you're going to find the incredible work of our really dedicated staff who labored over months and more intensely the past 3 weeks, not just with challenging numbers, but at times in actual physical danger so that Colorado could continue. This is only my second budget as a member of the Joint Budget Committee, and it is quite different than last year's budget. It's really extraordinary, and think about what that word means, extraordinary. It's not ordinary. Extraordinary doesn't necessarily mean good. It just means that it is so completely out of the ordinary. And that's because I really have no other word to convey the sheer magnitude of the revenue shortfall that we faced in this budget. The immensity, the expanse, the enormity of what was really an unprecedented and historic amount of revenue shortfall that we've ever experienced. It was greater than any of our prior recessions combined. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, and it was full of difficult choices, but what you have before you today is a balanced budget. And if I were a teacher or a senior or a disabled person, a veteran, a farmer, a patient, a retiree, a prison guard, a filmmaker, an entrepreneur, a prosecutor, an environmentalist, a construction worker, or a student, I'd find plenty of dissatisfaction in this budget. And that's because no one group was left untouched by the cuts that we recommended. But this budget also represents shared sacrifice. I received hundreds and hundreds of emails saying, don't balance this budget on the backs of students. Don't balance this budget on the backs of state workers. Don't balance this budget on the backs of seniors. Don't balance this budget on the backs of rural Colorado. Don't balance this budget on the backs of X, Y, and Z. You fill in the blank. But at the end of the day, it is our responsibility in this chamber, in this legislature, on the JBC, to produce a balanced budget. As a member of the Joint Budget Committee, we really took ownership of that responsibility. We owned it. And we sat in a room with masks on for sometimes 10 hours a day, digging into the numbers so that we would understand the full context of each and every line item. We examined lots of options. We weighed their collective benefit, and then we determined if our community could handle the changes. Now, I acknowledge that this budget contains a series of regrettable choices. However, I truly believe that the 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee, along with Senator Crowder, who listened in nearly every day, along with Senator Todd, who was on the phone and online listening to our discussions about education, along with Senator Lundeen, who participated and asked thoughtful questions, along with so many other people in this chamber. Because what was at question were things that we have fought for, things that we have worked really hard on, not only in this budget year, but in prior budget years, because people in this room cared about the impact of these budget decisions on their constituents, in their communities, and even within their own families. We owned that responsibility in this budget. And I truly believe that we did the best we could under enormously challenging circumstances. Now, some of you probably know that I grew up on the Western Slope in the country. I lived on a mountain in a house without electricity for the first years of my life. We moved out into the country near a place called Pea Green, and I lived in the middle of a cornfield surrounded by dairy lots and feedlots. And because I lived in the country, I have great affinity for country music. I love country music. I listen to it. My husband hates it. It's corny and it's twangy, and I love it. And there's a song, and for some of you who are not born recently, people perhaps of my generation, there is a song that is written by Aaron Tippin from 1991. And the song says, "You gotta stand for something or you'll fall for anything." And I know Senator Quorum is singing along right now. You gotta stand for something or you'll fall for anything. The song also talks about defending your family name, doing what's right, even during challenging situations. And I really see this budget as defending our family. Our family is Colorado. And sometimes you just got to do the right thing, even if that means facing difficult or painful choices. Now, I believe that what we did was not just reduce our budget, our general fund, by 25%. I don't think that that's just what we did. We didn't just reduce or cut. You got to think about what's in the other 75%. What did we protect? What did we defend? What did we stand up for? This budget is a catalog of consequences. It puts a mirror up to the most difficult truths of our time. It takes a historically unthinkable situation and it puts a number on it. In the wake of people losing jobs, oil prices crashing, tourism disappearing, this historic revenue loss. And we have a constitution that demands that we produce for the state of Colorado a balanced budget. I understand that your job today could not be harder. We are in troubling times, and this budget is very different than what we thought we were going to do back in January, and it is very different than what we even thought we were going to do back in March. But we put these numbers to paper. We began the process of tackling our recovery and our reform so that future legislatures can deliver in their budgets our highest aspirations. And so I ask you now today, I offer up to you today the best budget for the worst times. And I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I said my thanks yesterday, so I'll simply ask for an aye vote on this budget. But I did want to just take 1 second and reflect on the future, because those of us who come back in the next few years will be living with the implications of what we've done in this bill. Budget is policy. Budget affects people's lives throughout the state. And we've taken some amazingly difficult decisions and recommended them to you. I hope we've reflected, I believe, that we tried hard to reflect the priorities of our caucus. But as we recover, and God help us, I hope we recover faster than our forecast, and I think we may, we have to really work together. I mean, this partisan politics aside, 80% of budget decisions need to be bipartisan priority setting. So my challenge is that we start thinking now about recovery, that we do it in our bills for the rest of this year, we start to position, we get through this god-awful campaign season, that we start to think about our bills for next year, and we put them in the context of what we've done in this budget and what needs to recover and how we need to take care of our most vulnerable citizens. That was very much on our minds. I hope it becomes very much on your minds next year. So that's a challenge. Please vote for this budget. I wish that it were different.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did offer thanks yesterday, but I want to repeat those thanks today to the 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee and the 3 senators in particular who represent this chamber on that very important committee. During our long time away from the Capitol, the adjournment, folks at Colorado Politics asked 4 of us in leadership to write essays for the edition that was published our first week back. Because of the unexpected delay, there was a bit of time in between when that was written and when it was published, an extra week, I suppose. But when I thought about what I wanted to write about, it was very easy. My essay was about the fact that here in Colorado, $1 means exactly $1. And people aren't accustomed to that when dealing with government because most of what they know about government probably comes through radio or television or other news sources about what happens in our federal legislature, Congress, and Washington, D.C. And as we've seen during the COVID-19 time period, Congress has spent huge amounts of money that it never collected. They can print money, they can borrow money, they can spend vastly more dollars than they actually have. But we all know here in the General Assembly that we cannot do that here in Colorado. And that catches a lot of people off guard. Advocacy has to be conducted, in my opinion, in a different way here in this building than it would be in Congress, and probably in some other state legislatures. But here in Colorado, $1 means $1. And the hard reality for us during the COVID-19 adjournment was that we saw the reality of about 3.3 billion fewer dollars than we thought we were going to have. To Director Campman and everyone at JBC, thank you. And to the 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee, thank you for finding a way to craft a balanced budget based on that much less revenue. People think, I think sometimes if they study maybe on a superficial level what happens here at the Capitol, that our budget is somewhere north of $30 billion and carving 3.3 out of it might be somewhere around a 10% reduction or a 12 or 15% reduction. No. That's more like 25% because it's not out of the total budget, it's only out of the tax revenue third of our budget. And traditionally, a third of our budget is tax revenue, a third is fee revenue, and a third is about a third is federal revenue, reappropriated dollars. But we're talking about $3.3 billion out of what we had hoped to be 11 or 12. And when people hear those numbers, they're shocked. Is there joy in cutting that much out of a budget? No. People on both sides of the aisle gave up things that they had worked hard for in prior years. I want to say thank you also to the Executive Committee, to President Garcia, Majority Leader Fenberg, Speaker Becker, and Majority Leader Garnett, and Minority Leader Neville. The 6 of us spent a great deal of time trying to turn the focus of our respective caucuses to this. My appeal to the Senate Minority Caucus was, if you're thinking about running an amendment, maybe don't. Think about this as going into a session in October, November, December. If you want to affect some change, if there's something that you've always wanted to cut, now's your opportunity. But let our member of JBC or all of the JBC know about those because they're desperate to find cuts. And I'm grateful to the members of our caucus who did that. Thank you to all of the members of this chamber who turned your focus toward this incredible need and lending support, ideas, suggestion to the members of the Joint Budget Committee. It was inspiring, though it was also exhausting. I think all of us probably experienced this during the more than 2 months we were away from the Capitol. But I can assure you, in leadership, even minority leadership, it felt as though we were on the phone from the moment we woke to the moment we went to sleep. And those hours were long. During a phone conversation, there would be multiple text messages and emails, and then in between phone conversations, trying to get those things caught up and keep following up. And no, this isn't about me or those of us on the executive committee. I'm sure as busy as we were, Joint Budget Committee were even busier, because all those tens of thousands of people who are affected, millions really, people who are affected by the cuts that are in this budget were desperately seeking relief, or please don't cut us. And I'm sure that volume is far beyond anything that I had to deal with. But amid all of that turmoil and stress and long hours and pain, there was something that I was very proud of, in that we were working together, minority, majority, RD, House, Senate. There was tremendous communication, and the goal we all recognized was a dollar is a dollar here, and we're going to have 3.3 billion fewer of those. As I expressed yesterday in a few minutes of frustration, that changed just before we came back to the Capitol. There was a few things that felt like a gut punch. We are the appropriators. Our governor seemed to have a clear understanding of that and expressed that. And then that changed. Out of the $2.2 billion that came from the federal government, that Speaker Becker reached out to me, gosh, it seems like a year ago now, but she was speaking with U.S. Senator Bennett, and she asked me to reach out to U.S. Senator Cory Gardner, which we did. We started that conversation to get their feedback. How can the state use these dollars? What would the U.S. Department of Treasury, what sort of restrictions had they put on? Was there more flexibility coming? But that decision ultimately was taken away from us. And particularly in the minority caucus, in that bipartisan effort that we were participating in, that went away. And then when we come back to the Capitol, we're told that there's $70 million for the General Assembly remaining to allocate. And then for those of us, at least in the Senate Minority Caucus, that seemed to also go away. That's very frustrating. It's disappointing. I'm not here to ask you to vote one way or the other on the long bill. I came first to say thank you to the members of the Joint Budget Committee, the JBC staff, and to the fellow members of the Executive Committee, to the agency directors, Legislative Counsel, Legislative Legal Services, the State Auditor, and Joint Budget Committee. Those agency directors and the people that work for those four ladies, they did tremendous work. They had aspirations, goals, things that they wanted to achieve in this year's budget, the legislative appropriation bill, and now the long bill, and that all went away. Virtually every plan was put on hold. Thank you to everyone who helped us get here. I'm grateful. I wish that a few things had happened differently, and that the minority could have been included up until the last, but that didn't happen. Mr. Vice Chair, the Senator from Adams County, I think I've said things like this before, but I am grateful to serve with you. You are incredibly intelligent, you are patient, and you are willing to talk with people who may disagree with you and not be offended, and I'm grateful. To the Senator from Jefferson County, thank you for your 2 years on the Joint Budget Committee. I can't imagine how hard it's been. Thank you for your willingness to negotiate with us on the first bill a few years ago. But thank you for the tough choices that you made. And for the Senator from Senate District 8, Carbondale, thank you for being our representative on the Joint Budget Committee and the tremendous hours that you and your wife have devoted to this mission. I'm grateful for your work, and thank you for giving so much, all three of you, of your life over the past almost 3 months. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1360 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Gardner, Sonnenberg, Lundin, Woodward, Smallwood, Heisey. Mr. Minority Leader. With 20, is there a quorum? With 24 ayes, 9 no votes, one absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1360 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, Lee, Williams, Todd, Hansen, Fields, Janal. Members of the Joint Budget Committee and staff who helped prepare the budget, thank you so much for your work. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of 1384, House Bill 1384.
House Bill 1384 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senator Moreno concerning the delay of department implementation of high-fidelity wraparound services for eligible at-risk children unless money is appropriated for the services in connection with reducing appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1384 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1384 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1384 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1397.
House Bill 1397 by Representatives McCluskey and Ransom and Senators Moreno and Zenzinger concerning the elimination of the requirement that the Department of Public Health and Environment provide assistance to certain boards in connection with reducing an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1397 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1397 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1397 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Cook, Tate, Marble. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1391.
House Bill 1391 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Zenzinger concerning eliminating statutory requirements for programs to increase access to treatment for behavioral health disorders in connection with reducing appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1391 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1391 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1391 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Fields, Gonzalez, Todd. This is 1391. Co-sponsor, Senators Lee, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1024.
House Bill 1024 by Representatives Benavidez and Snyder and Senator Moreno concerning modifications to the state's net operating loss deduction.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1024 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1024 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Lundin, Marble, Sonnenberg, the Minority Leader, Cook, Gardner, Smallwood, Rankin, Woodward, Heisey, Tate, Scott, Quorum, Priola. With 19 ayes, 14 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1024 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Majority Leader. Senators Lee, Todd, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 200.
Senate Bill 200 by Senators Donovan and Pedersen, Representatives Kraft, Larp, and Beckman, concerning the implementation of the Colorado Secure Savings Program to increase the amount of retirement savings by Colorado's private sector workers.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 200 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 200 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Lundin, Woodward, Gardner, Scott, Cook, Rankin, Smallwood, Heisey, Tate, Quorum, Marble, Crowder. Senator Tate, I have you recorded as a no vote. Senator Lundin, I have you recorded as a no vote. Priola, Mr. Minority Leader. With 18 aye votes, 15 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 200 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Majority Leader. Senators Hansen, Winter, Janal, Lee, Williams, Rodriguez, Bridges, Moreno, Story, Todd, Fields. Please have the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1361.
House Bill 1361 by Representatives Escobar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Zinzinger, concerning the reduction of the adult dental benefit and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1361 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1361 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Woodward, Cook, Smallwood, Scott, Gardner, Heisey, Lundin, the Minority Leader. With 23 ayes, 10 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1361 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1362.
House Bill 1362 by Representatives McCluskey and Ransom, Senator Zenzinger, concerning a limitation on the general fund share of the per diem rates paid to nursing facilities for 2 years commencing with the 2020-21 fiscal year and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1362 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1362 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Crowder, Smallwood, Woodward, Quorum, Minority Leader, Gardner, Scott. With a vote of 26 ayes, 7 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1362 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1385.
House Bill 1385 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Zinzinger concerning the increased money received due to the Federal Family's First Coronavirus Response Act in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1385 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1385 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Lundin, Cook, Smallwood, Gardner, Woodward, Scott, Heisey, Tate. With 23 aye votes, 10 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1385 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1386.
House Bill 1386 by Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno concerning the use of a specified amount of money in the Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Fee Cash Fund to offset general fund expenditures for the State Medical Assistance Program in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1386 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1386 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Lundin, Scott, Gardner, Heisey, Cook, Smallwood, the Minority Leader, Sonnenberg, Woodward. Quorum. Tate. With 21 ayes, 12 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1386 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Lee.
'86.
Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1364.
House Bill 1364 by Representatives Escar and Ransom, Senators Moreno and Zinzinger concerning the repeal of the program to increase public awareness of opioid use implementation by the Center of Research in Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Support Strategies in connection with repealing a requirement for appropriations to the Center for the program, eliminating the scheduled sunset review of the program, and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1364 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1364 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Priola. Senator Pedersen. With 31 ayes, 2 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1364 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1365.
House Bill 1365 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Rankin and Moreno concerning the fiscal sustainability of History, Colorado.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1365 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1365 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Scott, Heisey, Smallwood, Gardner, Woodward, Cook, Lundin, With a vote of 24 ayes and 9 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1365 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Donovan, Hanson, Story, Gonzalez, Todd, Fields, Tate. Please add the president. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1366.
House Bill 1366 by Representatives Vescar, McCluskey, and Senators Zenzinger and Rankin concerning a higher education funding allocation model.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my pleasure to be able to move House Bill 1366 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1366 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 aye votes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1366 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Crowder, Story, Cook, Todd, Priola, Fields. Minority Leader. Scott, Smallwood, Todd, Lundeen, Woodward, Gardner, Marble, Tate, Lee, Donovan. Please add the president. Mr. Carpenter, please do the title to House Bill 1367.
House Bill 1367 by Representative Ransom and Moreno concerning the reallocation of state sales and use tax revenue from the Older Coloradans Cash Fund to the General Fund for the state fiscal year 2020-21.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before I move House Bill 1367, let me just quickly extend my thanks to the Minority Leader for his prior work on the higher ed funding models in prior sessions. Mr. President, I move House Bill 1367 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1367 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Gardner, Cook, Scott, Smallwood, Woodward, Heisey, Lundeen, with 24 ayes, 9 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1367 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1387.
House Bill 1387 by Representative Vescar and Senator Moreno concerning the repeal of the transfer of unexpended money for reimbursing counties for exemptions from property taxes.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1387 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1387 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, the Minority Leader, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Cook, Gardner, Scott, Coram, Smallwood, Lundeen, Woodward, Priola, Tate, with 20 ayes, 13 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1387 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1367. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1368.
House Bill 1368 by Representative McCluskey and Ransom, Senators Zinzinger and Rankin, concerning delaying the implementation of the Colorado Electronic Preservation of Abandoned Estate Planning Documents Act and in connection therewith decreasing an appropriation.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1368 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1368 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1368 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1393.
House Bill 1393 by Representative Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Zinzinger and Rankin, concerning expanding the mental health diversion pilot programs to include more judicial districts.
Senator Zinzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1393 on third and final reading, and I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1393 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Smallwood, Woodward, with 30 ayes, 3 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1393 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Crowder, Winter, Lee, Todd, Gardner, Foote, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1369.
House Bill 1369 by Representative McCluskey and Ransom, Senators Zinzinger and Rankin, concerning reducing the annual appropriation for prosecution training.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1369 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1369 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Cook, Gardner, Heisey, Lundeen, the Minority Leader, Scott, Woodward, Smallwood, with a vote of 25 ayes, 8 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1369 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1369. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1371.
House Bill 1371 by Representative Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Zinzinger, concerning implementation of the Community Substance Use and Mental Health Services Grant Program and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Zinzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1371 on third reading and final passage, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1371 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Gardner, Woodward, Lundeen, Heisey, Scott, Priola, Minority Leader. With 26 ayes, 7 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1371 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1372.
House Bill 1372 by Representative Escar, McCluskey, and Senator Rankin concerning the repeal of the provisions related to mine land reclamation.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1372 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1372 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Woodward. With 32 ayes, 1 no vote, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1372 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1375.
House Bill 1375 by Representative Ransom, Senator Zenzinger, and Rankin concerning the repeal of the authority for the Division of Criminal Justice to expend an unused appropriation for the law enforcement grant program in the next fiscal year without further appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1375 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1375 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Crowder, Scott, Marble, Cook, Heisey, Gardner, Sonnenberg, Woodward, Lundeen, Tate, Smallwood. Minority Leader. With 21 ayes, 12 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1375 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1377.
House Bill 1377, Representative Escar, McCluskey, and Senator Zenzinger, and Rankin concerning a requirement that a portion of the proceeds of the Senate Bill 17267 lease purchase agreement that will be executed in state fiscal year 2019-20 be credited to the Capital Construction Fund and appropriated only for controlled maintenance projects, including controlled maintenance projects that are capital renewal projects.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1377 on third reading, final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1377 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Woodward, Heisey, Marble, Sonnenberg. Senator Sonnenberg, are you a no vote on 1377? Senator Sonnenberg. Scott. Gardner. Cook. Smallwood. Crowder. Lundeen. Priola. With 21 ayes, 12 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1377 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Hansen. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1378.
House Bill 1378 by Representative Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Zenzinger concerning capital-related transfers of money.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1378 on third reading and final passage.
Please, there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1378 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Smallwood, Woodward, Heisey, Sonnenberg, Lundeen, Scott. Priola. With 25 ayes, 8 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1378 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1398.
House Bill 1398, Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senator Rankin, concerning modifications to the Almanac Cash Fund funding mechanism for payment of future costs attributable to the state's capital assets and in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1398 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1398 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Scott, Marble, Lundin, Woodward, Cook, Gardner, Smallwood, Heisey, with 24 ayes, 9 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1398 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Tate, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1379.
House Bill 1379 by Representative Ransom, Senator Rankin, concerning suspending the direct distribution to the Public Employees Retirement Association for the 2020-21 state fiscal year and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1379, third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1379 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Woodward, Senator Tate, Gardner, Smallwood, Priola. With 28 ayes, 5 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1379 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1380.
House Bill 1380 by Representative McCluskey and Ransom, Senators Moreno and Zinzinger, concerning the redirection of a portion of tobacco litigation settlement monies to the general fund.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1380 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is for the adoption of House Bill 1380 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Heisey, the Minority Leader, Gardner, Lundin, Scott, Cook, Woodward, Smallwood. With 23 ayes, 10 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1380 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1381.
House Bill 1381 by Representative Escar and Senators Zinzinger and Rankin, concerning the augmentation of the general fund through transfers of certain money.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1381 and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of House Bill 1381 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Gardner, Lundin, Heisey, Scott, the Minority Leader, Woodward, Sonnenberg, Cook, Smallwood, Tate, Quorum. With a vote of 21 ayes, 12 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1381 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1383.
House Bill 1383 by Representative Escar and Ransom, Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning a temporary reduction in the general fund reserve.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1383 lay over until Monday, June 8th.
You have heard the motion. The motion is to lay over House Bill 1383 until 6/8/2020. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1383 will be laid over until 6/8/2020. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1389.
House Bill 1399 by Representatives Escobar, McCluskey, and Senators Moreno and Rankin concerning the temporary suspension of statutory allocations of the limited gaming tax revenues in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1399 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1399 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Woodward, Mr. Minority Leader, Heisey, Gardner, Cook, Smallwood. With a vote of 27 ayes, 6 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1399 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1400.
House Bill 1400 by Representatives Escobar, McCluskey, and Senator Moreno and Zinzinger concerning the temporary reallocation of limited gaming tax revenues to address recovery following the 2020 budget crisis.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1400 and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1400 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Lundin, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Cook, Minority Leader, Scott, Woodward, Gardner, Smallwood. With 23 ayes, 10 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1400 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1401.
House Bill 1401 by Representatives Escobar and Ransom, Senators Moreno and Rankin concerning the transfers of money from the marijuana tax cash fund to the general fund that is made available due to the repeal of the prohibition on the General Assembly appropriating money from the marijuana tax cash fund in the year that the money is received.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1401 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1401 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, the Minority Leader, Sonnenberg, Scott, Heisey, Lundin, Woodward, Gardner, Smallwood. Cook, Tate, with 22 ayes, 11 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1401 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1382.
House Bill 1382 by Representatives McCluskey and Ransom, Senators Moreno and Rankin concerning the repeal of certain cash funds that include reversions of general fund appropriations.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1382 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1382 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1382 is passed. Co-sponsors. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 007.
Senate Bill 007 by Senators Pedersen and Winter, Representatives Montayo and Wilson concerning treatment for substance use disorders and in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 7 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of Senate Bill 007 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Cook, Gardner, Lundin, Marble, Sonnenberg, Woodward, Scott, Rankin, Heisey. With 23 ayes, 10 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 007 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Donovan, Majority Leader, Story, Todd, Lee, Bridges, please have the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1061.
House Bill 1061 by Representatives Valdez and Harrington, Senators Moreno, Priola, concerning pharmacists' ability to provide HIV infection prevention medications to patients in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1061 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, just recall that we adopted an amendment yesterday that doesn't make it a requirement for health insurers, as most health insurers already cover it. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just wanted to thank the bill sponsors for the amendments that they put on this bill based off of our discussion in committee. You know, it's interesting, so often here in this chamber, we hear about prescription drugs, and it's all negative. All we hear about is how drug companies are bad and they're gouging the consumers and not doing good thing to society. Well, I will tell you, as a person that went to high school in the late 80s and college in the early 90s, I never could have imagined that the pharmaceutical industry in 30 years could have possibly created not only a pre-exposure medication to prevent HIV and a post-exposure medication to prevent HIV. And the fact that this isn't like front page news over the course of the last 3 years or something that we see in papers and journals and articles, to me is absolutely amazing. Now we don't have a cure for AIDS or for HIV infections, but we've come so far just in my adult life that I think it is appropriate to give a shout out to the pharmaceutical industry when they've earned it. And this is an example of exactly that. So I thank the bill sponsors. Really, at this point, all the bill does is make it easier for folks to get this medication. The insurance industry, as far as I'm concerned, not only doesn't oppose this bill, but they're already doing what the bill provides. So it just makes it easier. Folks can get this medication at pharmacies now. The sponsors were kind enough to eliminate the mandate pieces of it as I see it, so I'm going to be a yes vote and appreciate the work that the bill sponsors did.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1061 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Lundin, with 30 aye votes, 3 no votes, 1 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1061 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Donovan, Winter, Story, Lee, Williams, Rodriguez, Crowder, Smallwood, Bridges, Pedersen, Todd, Hanson, Fields, Majority Leader. Please have the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 055.
Senate Bill 55 by Senators Buell and Story and Representatives Scudder and Arndt concerning the expansion of the market mechanisms for the further development of recycling and in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 55 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 055 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Donovan, Quorum, the Minority Leader, Crowder, Scott, Woodward, Sonnenberg, Lundin, Marble, Heisey, Senator Heisey, are you a no vote? Correction. Senator Heisey will be recorded as a yes vote. No votes. Gardner, Rankin, Cook, with 21 ayes, 12 no votes, 1 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 055 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Moreno, Winter, Hansen, Pedersen, Gonzalez, Lee, Williams, Todd, Foote, Majority Leader. Please add the President. General order, second reading of bills. Committee reports.
June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 205 be amended as follows, as so amended, be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 207 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 210 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 212 be amended as follows, as so amended, be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 214 be amended as follows, as so amended, be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. A recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 215 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 219 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. June 6, 2020, Committee on Appropriations, after consideration of merits, Committee acts the following. Senate Bill 217 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation.
General order, second reading of bills. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Moreno will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Concurrent Resolution 1?
Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 by Senators State and Hansen, Representative Escar and Soper, submitting the registered elections of the state of Colorado, the amendment to the Colorado Constitution, and repeal the requirement that the General Assembly periodically change the residential assessment rate in order to maintain the statewide proportion of residential property as compared to all other taxable property value for property tax purposes, and repeal the non-residential property tax assessment rate of 29%.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Concurrent Resolution 001 to the bottom of the general order second reading of Bill's calendar.
The motion is to lay over Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 to the end of the second reading of Bill's calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will be laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of the Senate Bill 211?
Senate Bill 211 by Senators Winter and Gonzalez concerning limitations on certain debt collection actions.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for passage on second reading Senate Bill 211, as well as the Finance Committee report.
To the Finance Committee report. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Finance Committee report, we considered the bill and sent it over here. I asked for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Finance Committee report is adopted. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment L016?
Amendment L016, Senate Bill 211 by Senator Gonzalez, amendment printable page 3, line 10, strike that, page 3, strike
Senator
line.
Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move Amendment L016 to Senate Bill 211.
To the amendment, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, I just want to start off by talking about the importance of this policy. This bill is really about protecting Coloradans from extraordinary debt collections here during the pandemic. Guess what? Initially, the debt collectors weren't happy about it. And so we actually sat down, we heard from many of them, probably it felt like every debt collector in the state during our finance committee, but that's clearly not true, but it felt like it. And then we had a lot of conversations with proponents as well as debt collectors themselves. And in the spirit of compromise and in the spirit of trying to hear both sides and come together, that is the context in which we bring you Amendment L016. This amendment makes a number of changes to the bill, narrowing it while still providing strong temporary relief for Colorado families. With the amendment, this bill will now prohibit any new extraordinary collection of debts from now until November 1st, 2020, with the potential that this could be extended through February 1st, 2021 by the Uniform Consumer Credit Code Administrator. There's several other pieces of this. We do strike several sections that had been proposed in the introduced bill. And colleagues, I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment 16 is making some major concessions. There is nothing permanent left in the bill. There is concessions around notification. And while some of what this bill is doing might be good on a permanent level, we felt it was more appropriate to have that conversation next year. And really what this has done is brought debt collectors together with those representing consumers, and everyone has reached an agreement on this. And we know that this is a longer amendment, and to be perfectly honest with you, we thought about offering these in single amendments for dramatic effect to show all the concessions we were making, and decided just to send it forward in one clear amendment that is a compromise amendment. And we believe that this shows legislatively what we should move forward when we actually work together with both sides.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A request to Senatorial 5. It is a multi-page amendment, and I appreciate the sponsor explaining that it may have come as 2 or 3 separate amendments, but if we could have a few minutes to review it, I would be grateful.
That is absolutely appropriate, Mr. Minority Leader. We will be in a Senatorial 5. Is there further discussion on Amendment L016? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to demonstrate that that Amendment 16 represents this many compromises that we just decided to run in one amendment. Thank you very much. I ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Senator Lundeen.
Here's a copy of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the bill sponsor's willingness to work on this. We heard a fairly, I think, a very insightful explanation of the word extraordinary with regard to the budget. It is extraordinary, not in the positive connotation sense of the word that we always hear about it. You always hear about an extraordinary athlete or an extraordinary intellect, somebody who is beyond and above what you would expect. But we are operating in extraordinary times right now. Everybody knows that. Everybody understands that. And normally, when you've hashed out a bill, when you've worked through the process over the course of days and weeks, even if it's in the waning days of a session, a legislative session, there's this sense of relief, this sense of we've arrived there together. But I've got to tell you, as you live your life today, everything you do, except driving on the highways and byways of the state, which is now easier, everything you do takes a lot more time, it takes a lot more energy, It just takes so much more. And this legislative process we're going through in so many ways is just the opposite. Things are happening like this. Instead of working to a, hey, that's where we want to get to kind of moment, people are being cowed into accepting things that don't work for them because they just can't get to the building, or they're just not welcome in the building, or they just have a family member who would be at risk if they come to the building. And so they can't really participate in the process. And I have the tone, the tenor, the sense of what's happening specifically on this piece of legislation and several other pieces of legislation. It just doesn't feel the same as it normally does as we come together and work diligently and struggle. Now, why does this matter? And I start off by saying I appreciate so much this amendment because it makes a really bad bill a bad bill. It still goes to a place that we don't want to go. And so I will say thanks for the amendment. The acceptance of the amendment, my sense is not one of, wow, relief, release, we've arrived there together, this is a good answer. It's one of, golly, this is far better than continuing to receive the challenge that would be before us, but it's still absolutely not the right answer. And I'll speak to the underlying matters, the underlying challenges that I think this particular bill causes when we get to the bill. So I accept the amendment, but I just want to call out clearly that we've arrived at this in a way that just does not have the release and relief that typically a negotiation ends in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Winter.
Yes, we are working in unprecedented times where we don't have 100 people staring at us through that glass, trying to get us to vote one way or another. But they are on our phones, they're on our text messages, and just because we are in an unprecedented time where people aren't in the building, I didn't change how I do my work. I have talked to all the opposition. Some of them came down here the other day, and I met with them. I've been on numerous phone calls late at night, and I have not changed how I do my work. Because you know what? Yes, there's a pandemic, and maybe people don't feel safe coming down here because they're worried about getting the coronavirus. Maybe they're scared about coming down here because of the protests happening outside, but I've still talked to all of them. I have talked to all of them. I literally am getting texts right now from them. And so we've been asked by the good senator from Centennial to go through this amendment again about what concessions we're making. And so what this amendment does is it prohibits any new extraordinary, and that's a legal term. I know we've talked about what extraordinary means and we used it on the budget, but that's actually a term in the Uniform Consumer Protection Code, and it means garnishment. We're talking about taking your car away, garnishing your wages, garnishing any stimulus checks you might get, garnishing your bank accounts, garnishing your household goods. That's what it means. It requires debt collectors to provide notification to debtors that they're eligible to say hardship from the coronavirus. So something we made a change is we actually just wanted to give a timeout at first. Now we're putting the requirement on those that have to pay a debt to show that they have a hardship from the coronavirus, that they have lost their job, that they have lost their job because they had a quarantine, they lost their job because they're in the hospital, they lost their job because they had to take care of someone. So you don't just get it automatically, you've had to show hardship. So the original bill just said you get this. Now, we're making the person getting that collection show it. We are one of only a few states that don't have, that you can have some savings in your account and not have it garnished. This was the biggest part of the negotiations. We wanted this to be permanent. We made it temporary and we took it down from 7,000 to 4,000. So that was another give we did. We also struck all the other permanent things of this bill. So we struck the part that doubled the threshold on household goods from 3,000 to 6,000. We struck the part that did 2 motor vehicles or bicycles from 7,000 to 15,000. We struck the part that raised it for elderly or disabled people, that the levels from 12,000 to 20,000. We struck the part about the amount of garnishment you can have from 10 to 20%, which means you can actually garnish up to 20% of people's income right now. It's fine. We struck the part that increased the amount of garnishment of what was disposable income. We struck the additional part about your income at the federal level. And so we struck most of this bill. And to say that because in this time we didn't talk is frustrating, because we've been on numerous conference calls and have been incredibly responsive. And to say we can't act to protect our folks, I've had constituents call me in tears because they're in collections. Constituents call me in tears because they are losing their house right now. We worked with folks, we've listened to folks, we did not change how we did our job.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am grateful to the bill sponsors. The amendment did help a great deal. And I was occupied with something else, trying to organize what's coming up. And I heard a tone, maybe a change of tone in the well. So I came to find out why. And I think the senator from Adams County, her perspective is valid, but in talking with the good senator from El Paso County, I think for us, what was intended is that we have felt disconnected from stakeholders who are not here, not you. So thank you for the time that you spent on the phone. If that was implied that that was directed to you, I apologize. I don't want to speak for the senator from El Paso, but I did hear that tone, and I just wondered, gosh, what happened? Having been chair of Senate Business and on the Business Committee, my 4 years in the House, and then my first 2 years in the Senate, and as Majority Leader, I've worked with these stakeholders before, and I have felt disconnected, and I believe that's what the senator from El Paso meant. So I apologize if there was anything that indicated that that was directed at you, and thank you for your stakeholder process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L016. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the efforts to get to a better policy. I am resolute in my conclusion that this is still not where we should be. And here's the reason why. So what this conversation really is about there are a number of people who are feeling pinched and in crisis, and they're reaching out, and we as legislators respond to our constituents. We seek to solve problems on their behalf, and that is good. That is exactly as it should be. The challenge is sometimes in our efforts to do that, if it doesn't just become a response to that constituent's problem and a resolution, a better interaction with bureaucracy, a clearer understanding of the available pathways, if it becomes a law, if a policy change grows out of that, it doesn't just affect that constituent. Now, this particular crisis involves hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe even perhaps tens of thousands of individuals. And they come out of this group of people in our society who live on the edge of credit worthiness, who live on the edge of financial challenge. And there is an entire credit supporting apparatus out there that provides credit to these individuals so that they can have access to their slice of America, their slice of Colorado, their slice of the life we all want to have. The challenge is, this particular bill, I believe, will have the unintended consequence of responding quickly and aggressively to the needs of 100 or 1,000 or maybe even 10,000 people, and at the same time it's going to take away access to credit for hundreds of thousands, maybe even 500,000, an enormous amount of, larger amount of people than this bill seeks to solve the problem for. And that's when we find ourselves moving astray. I call it the challenge or the question of the forgotten person. We're seeking to solve a problem for this one person, and all of these other people over there, we're forgetting about their needs. We're forgetting about the fact that this change is going to make it harder for them to get access to credit. It's going to make it harder for them to buy that fundamental thing they need for their family on credit, or maybe it's just a convenience they would like to have a sense of well-being. It's going to make it harder for so many people to do that. And it creates a distortion in the process where it's giving additional authority to the government bureaucracy in the method, in the way it does that. It continues to do that. It gives greater authority to bureaucrats in government over whether this gets extended. And so there are challenges in this. Not that I don't seek and desire and want to resolve the matter for those who are feeling financially pressured right now. And I will pause to say many of the things that this bill speaks to broadly, when you get into the details, are not true. Unemployment wages cannot be garnished. Some of the protections this bill would represent itself to provide, the protections already exist. There isn't a threat to some of the very challenges this bill seeks to get. So my greatest concern is that in the effort to solve a problem for a number of people, we will in fact have put in place a law, elements of which, fewer now, I acknowledge that, fewer now, will remain permanent, but still there are elements that will be permanently in place. There is a change in tone. There is a change in the connotations of the words being used. The words being used in this bill change the way we look at and think at that most important element, and that is providing credit, making sure credit is available to individuals of our society that may be living on the financial margins of society. So, as simply a caution, I urge opposition to the bill. I do want to acknowledge that in these extraordinary times, the bill sponsors have done the work as diligently as you can. My complaint isn't really against the bill sponsors. My complaint is that at the end of the day, it is my belief that given the pressures on, the challenges within, the difficulties in our job to get to a policy answer, we've moved too quickly. We've moved incompletely. We have not had the normal public discourse. I didn't hear from the people I wanted to hear from. I wanted to hear from people who were affected by this, and I wanted to hear from the people out there who may be in the future not able to get at credit if this bill in fact becomes law. So I appreciate the effort. I'm frustrated by the effort, not the bill sponsors. I'm not at all frustrated with them. I want to be clear about that. But I am frustrated by the process through which I feel we have been dragged. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 211. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debt collection is really important, both as an economic justice issue as well as a racial justice issue. 1 in 4 Coloradans has navigated debt collections prior to the pandemic, but that number actually doubles to 44% of colored people who have navigated debt collections, and that was prior to the pandemic. We know that frontline workers, people who are living paycheck to paycheck, who have to show up as essential workers every day, have to be able to pay rent, to be able to pay their living expenses, have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. This bill is a response to that. To say in this moment, in this extraordinary moment, let us pass and move forward protections for people from extraordinary debt collections. Those are the words of the bill sponsor just a couple of days ago in committee. My question to the bill sponsor that day was, why is it wrong for private enterprise to come back and try to collect those debts? But at the same time, this bill lets local governments and state governments step in and step on the neck, and, well, I don't want to lean on other events that are going on outside right now, but why are we going to let the government dip into the paychecks of the folks who are suffering the most right now? Why would we want this body, why would we want government to dig into the pockets of those who have been most affected by the coronavirus or the shutdown?
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 211? Nope. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment L003?
Amendment L003, Senate Bill 211 by Senator Woodward. Amendment printed bill page 3, strike lines 8
Senator
to 9.
Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment simply says, you know what, if this bill is going to go forward and we are going to prohibit people, firms, corporations, limited liability companies, partnerships, if we are going to prohibit them from dipping in and garnishing the people who have been most affected by COVID, the minorities, people of low income, we are also going to prohibit government and state government, local government, and government subsidies and agencies from dipping into those same paychecks.
Senator Woodward, please move the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L03.
The amendment has been moved and is properly before us. Senator Lundeen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment. This is one of those moments of truth. We get them frequently when we're shaping policy, and we get them frequently when it comes to the amendment process. It's one of those moments where there is a clear moment of truth. If you believe what you say you're trying to do, and you're going to affect private enterprise in a meaningful way and distort marketplaces in a meaningful way, shouldn't government be held to the same standard? The reality is, if we're going to protect people that are suffering financial hardship, then we ought to protect them across the board. So I don't see how you can possibly oppose this amendment and then stand in favor of the bill. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If we're going to take care of people and protect them, let's protect them across the board, not giving government an exception so government can cause them more difficulty and causing others not to be able to have that interaction with them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm willing to continue this conversation on the policy. And the other day, I stood in this well and said, colleagues, can we please be careful with our language at this point? And we just had a colleague about debt collection use the term step on the neck. And that is so hurtful and so problematic right now. So I will continue to have this conversation about the government, but at this time, I said, let's be careful about our language right now. We can't use terms like thugs and step on the neck.
Further discussion on L003. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to make sure that the record's clear is that as those words were coming out, some of the words that I started to speak, that I caught myself, recognizing that those are words that are potentially hurtful right now, I stopped myself before I finished those, because I don't want this to focus on events that are going outside of this building. So,
Seeing no further discussion on L003, the question before us is the adoption of the amendment. Oh, Senator Marble.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I rise in support of this amendment. Colleagues, government, I want to give you a little bit of an explanation about why this is so critical. And there is, right now, in the Senate office, a request to run a bill that lets treasurers, county treasurers, gain more flexibility in how they collect property taxes. It's not been approved yet to run, and that was an idea originally that came up with my conversations with my county treasurer, because of the fact that so many of these people who have been shut down during the COVID crisis, they haven't had the money to pay their property taxes in full. My treasurer wanted flexibility on how to collect those taxes, because if those taxes aren't paid, just a property maybe worth $300,000 is going to be lost because somebody couldn't pay $2,000 on their property tax. And it's the government's gain. Is that fair? The government stands to gain more than anyone else if we do not include them in this bill. They are the most heavy-handed debt collector on the planet. The IRS, state, Department of Revenue, county treasurers who are going through a very, very hard time, heart-wrenching. It's just heart-wrenching, the stories that they are listening to from people who want to pay their taxes but can't. And then the county treasurers are not going to be allowed any flexibility in how they're going to collect those taxes and help these people keep their properties that the government is going to take in total. This is an in-your-face, just amendment that the people need to be in this bill. We're looking at helping the people. I truly get that, but how are you going to help a person if you don't include some of the biggest and most egregious offenders? It's like government is exempt from everything because we need that money and we're going to get that money. And all of a sudden, the individuality and the things that we are supposed to be advocating for here at the well and under this great building, it just goes out the window because government comes first. And actually, it's a very selfish, heavy-handed government. And many people are going to suffer under this bill because of what it doesn't contain. And that is the biggest, most harsh debt collector on earth, our government. This is reasonable, this is necessary, and this is just. If we are looking at debt collection, it's across the board. Everyone is included. So let's get those government entities who just don't take what's owed, they take the whole property, sell it, and everything. The American dream is a total loss. This is our job, to look after everyone. And if we don't include government in this bill, shame on us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Noes have it, and the amendment is lost. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 211? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 211. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to House Bill 1206?
House Bill 1206 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Landgraf, Senators Winter and Tate, concerning the continuation of the regulation of mental health professionals and in connection with implementing recommendations contained in the 2019 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1206, and it does not have a report, so I just move House Bill 1206.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1206? Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are getting Amendment 26 delivered to the desk. What Amendment 26 does is directs DORA to look at regulations around letters of admonishment and felony requirements to become a mental health care provider. And this is important because we know that we need great addiction recovery providers, and some of them might have had a felony conviction in their background, and we want to make sure that those people are being able to provide mental health resources. The study is a compromise, and we agree with this compromise. And once L026 gets up here, we'll move it.
Why don't we stand in a senatorial 5 while we locate that amendment?
I got one copy from Chris.
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment L026?
Amendment L026, House Bill 1206.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L026.
To the amendment, Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As discussed, this is about doing a task force to look at, when we are certifying mental health care workers, past felony convictions, nonviolent ones, which I explained is important, and also letters of admonition and how long they stay on the record. And this is a lot of stakeholder work, and we encourage a yes vote on L026.
Further discussion on L026? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L026. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Is there further discussion on House Bill 1206? Seeing none, Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I encourage a yes vote on this. This makes sure that we are adequately providing mental health services in Colorado, which is now more important than ever. I encourage a yes vote.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Mental Health Practice Act is a continuation of a regulatory structure for mental health professionals. If you think about how many different kinds there are, I want to give a shout out to the trade associations and the representatives who are involved in months and months of work on this bill. It's a surprisingly high level and extensive level of work they performed. I want to give them our appreciation. Thank you, stakeholders.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1206? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1206. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1206 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Concurrent Resolution 1? Oh, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 lay over until Monday, June 8th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 until Monday. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the resolution will be laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the report?
Mr. Carpenter, before you read the report, will you please add Senator Danielson to the roll call? And please read the report.
Mr. President, your committee of the whole Blake's lead report is that on consideration of the following test bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations to run Senate Bill 211 as amended past second reading order and gross place accounted for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1206 is amended past second reading order revised place accounted for third reading and final passage. SCR 1 laid over until 6/8/20 retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee report, committee of the whole report. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 001 of the committee of the whole report?
Committee of the whole Amendment 001, Senate Bill 211, Senator Woodward moved to amend the report of the committee of the whole show that the following Woodward floor amendment L003 to Senate Bill 211 did pass amendment printed bill page 3 strike lines 18 or 19 substitute C person means a national person firm corporation limited liability company partnership or government or governmental subdivision
Senator Woodward.
agency.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move committee of the whole report amendment 001.
To the amendment, Senator.
001 makes it clear that we passed something that if it's good for the gander, it's good for the goose. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So if we are going to demand that private enterprise, individual people have a chance to dip, if we're going to prohibit them from dipping into the paychecks and garnishment to collect debts that are rightfully owed to them, then it's only fair that we include government at the same time. So I urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to urge a no vote on this. The government doesn't use garnishment to collect property taxes, and that's ultimately what this bill is about, and so I urge a no vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. In response to the prior question, the government uses garnishment to collect lots of things, whether they're judgments, past due taxes, not just property taxes. It touches on the whole shebang of chances that the government has to collect on debts owed to them. I know because I've seen lots of those garnishments flow through from state and local governments, and it's appropriate to make sure that we protect the paychecks of the people who have been most affected by COVID, particularly those with low income and those who've been affected by COVID.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Cal Amendment 001 of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? Senators Fields, Foote, Lee, Williams, Danielson, Story, Bridges, Gonzalez, Zenzinger, Moreno, Rodriguez, Janal, Hanson, Todd, Pedersen, Donovan, Winter.
You need Fields?
Majority Leader. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 19 no votes, 1 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment 001 is lost. The question before the body is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With 34 aye votes, 0 no votes, 1 absent, and 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 211 as amended passed on second reading, ordered and gross and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1206 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. SCR 001 laid over until 6/8/2020 and retaining their place on the calendar. Consideration of conference committee reports. Will the clerk please read the title? House Bill 1029.
House Bill 1029 by Representative Pelton and Senator Heisey, concerning the authority of an elected county officer to elect to receive a lower salary than the amount provided for by law.
Yeah, but you weren't at the conference call. We made a name for you.
I appreciate that.
The late Senator Bridges.
Late?
Well, we thought you were going to be late.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adopt the first report of the Conference Committee on House Bill 1029.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for the adoption of the first report for the Conference Committee on 1029. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, one absent, and 0 excused, the first report of the Conference Committee is adopted. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1029.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for the repassage of House Bill 1029. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 1029 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Senators Smallwood.
Yeah, but you're not on there, so.
Donovan.
There you go.
Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 220 by Senators Heisey and Garcia and Representative Soper and Young, concerning instituting a temporary freeze in the amount of legislative daily per diem rate allowed to a non-metro member of the General Assembly.
Appropriations.
House Bill 1119 by Representative Exum and Landgraf, Senators Heisey and Lee, concerning the authority of the state government to regulate perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Finance.
House Bill 1143 by Representatives Jackson and Gonzalez Gutierrez and Senator Winter, concerning additional public health protections regarding alleged environmental violations in connection with raising the maximum fines for air quality and water quality violations, allocating the fines to environmental mitigation projects.
Finance.
House Bill 1184 by Representatives Mateo and Pelton, Senators Heisey and Donovan, concerning the continuation of the Colorado Seed Act and in connection therewith implement recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
House Bill 1207 by Representatives Melton and Wilson, Senators Foote and Cook, concerning the continuation of the regulation of private investigators.
Finance.
House Bill 1211 by Representatives Valdez D. and Holtorf and Senator Rodriguez, concerning continuation and licensing of egg dealers and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
House Bill 1218 by Representatives Buckner and Hawkins Lewis and Senator Danielson, concerning the continuation of the licensing of hearing aid providers and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
House Bill 1219 by Representative Buckner and Hawkins Lewis and Senator Danielson, concerning the continuation of the licensing of audiologists and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
House Bill 1265 by Representatives Benavides and Baltazar and Senator Gonzalez and Moreno, concerning increased public protections from emissions of air toxics.
Finance.
House Bill 1285 by Representative Sullivan and Senator Foote, concerning the continuation of the motorcycle operator safety training program and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
House Bill 1286 by Representatives Garnett and Williams D. and Senators Story and Cook, concerning the continuation of the regulation of fantasy contest operators in connection therewith, implementing the recommendations contained in 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1290 by Representative Garnett, Senator Finbury, concerning the ability of an insured to use a failure to cooperate defense in an action in which the insured has made a claim under insurance coverage for an accident.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1293 by Representatives McCluskey and Pelton, Senators Quorum and Gonzalez, concerning the provision of emergency telephone service and in connection therewith, establishing the 911 surcharge and amending the requirements for the emergency telephone charge and the prepaid wireless 911 charge.
Finance.
House Bill 1336 by Representatives Mikeson, Janae, and Sirota, and Senators Finberg and Heisey, concerning requiring the satisfactory completion of a course that includes Holocaust and genocide studies as a condition of high school graduation in public schools.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1376 by Representatives Escar, McCluskey, and Senators Zenzinger and Rankin, concerning the modification of transportation funding mechanisms in connection with delaying from the November 2020 general election to the November 2021 statewide election, the requirement that a ballot issue seeking approval for the issuance of transportation revenue anticipation notice be submitted to the voters of this state, amending the ballot issue to reduce the amount of notes authorized to be issued, eliminate specified schedule general fund transfer to the state highway fund, reducing the amount of general fund money dedicated to make lease purchase agreement payments due during state fiscal years 2020-21 and 2021-22, and repealing the Department of Transportation rulemaking reporting requirements relating to motor vehicles used for certain types of commercial purposes.
Finance.
House Bill 1402 by Representatives Weissman, Van Winkle, Senators Gardner and Lee, concerning the non-substantive revision of statutes in the Colorado Revised Statutes as amended, and in connection therewith, amending or repealing obsolete, imperfect, and non-operative laws to preserve the legislative intent, effect, and meaning of the law.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1404 by Representatives Weissman and Soper, Senators Lee and Cook, concerning continuation of the Sex Offender Management Board and in connection therewith delaying consideration of the recommendations of the 2019 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies until the 2021 regular session.
State Veterans and Military Affairs. Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we are going to take up just 5 bills right now on special orders. 4 of these were in Appropriations Committee this morning. The 5th is on Monday's calendar, which is Senate Bill 28. So, Mr. President, I move that the Senate take up Senate Bill 207, 210, 214, 219, and 28 on special orders second reading at the hour of 11:30.
The motion is that the Senate bill will take up the following bills: Senate Bill 207, 210, 214, 219, and Senate Bill 28 on special orders at the hour of 11:30. This motion requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and those bills will be taken up on special orders at the hour of 11:30.
Chris. We don't. I'll just say them again.
All right. Yeah.
Special order, second reading of bills. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole for consideration of special orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the committee of the whole for consideration of special orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Moreno will take the chair.
Somebody he's on the phone with us. Yeah, you just said
He's
that.
talking to a sheriff.
What? Are those special orders?
No. He told me he talked to you.
Did you call up 219?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But towards the end of it.
For the day, yeah.
Yep.
I think we're fine.
I'm just going to clarify for everyone what we're doing. Have we come to order? Did you already come to order? Oh, I thought you were waiting on me.
Well, we were in disagreement about it, but.
The committee will come to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we did not pass out a calendar, but just to clarify so we're all on the same page, we will be taking up in this order Senate Bills 207, 210, 214, 219, and 28. 28.
Clear as mud, everyone? All right. Great. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 207?
Senate Bill 207 by Senators Hansen and Winter concerning unemployment insurance.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 207. And the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the Appropriations Committee looked at the fiscal note and passed this bill out to the Committee of the Whole. Happy to discuss that in detail if you'd like. There is companion legislation that will cover the costs as indicated in the fiscal note, and you'll be seeing that next week. And at this point, I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Senator Hansen, I think it was so good that I don't think there is an Appropriations Committee report, right? Finance.
Oh.
There's a finance one, though, which the Finance Committee is not as expedient as the Appropriations.
That's it.
Senator Hansen.
Mr. Chair, my apologies. You're absolutely right. We should have been concentrating on the Finance Committee report. I move the Finance Committee report.
To the Finance Committee report. Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We brought forward a number of amendments for the Finance Committee to consider. They were all adopted without opposition. Both myself and Senator Winter worked hard with stakeholders over the last couple of weeks to make the final adjustments to the bill after introduction. That was reflected in the series of amendments that we did in the Finance Committee, and I'd ask for your adoption of the Finance Committee report.
Is there further discussion on the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the passage of Senate Bill 207 as amended with a favorable recommendation.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 207. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 207. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 207 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 210?
Senate Bill 210 by Senator Gonzalez concerning extension of the scheduled appeal date for Uniform Commercial Code filing fees to provide funding for the Colorado Fraud Investigators Unit.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 210 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 210? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 210. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 210 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 214?
Senate Bill 214 by Senator Finberg and Holbert and Representatives Garnett and Neville concerning legislative interim committee activities and in connection therewith suspending legislative interim activities during the 2020 interim and changing the minimum number of meetings that the Early Childhood School Readiness Legislative Commission must hold to be the maximum number of meetings annually that the commission may hold.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 214 And I don't believe there's a committee report.
Appropriations Committee report, Mr. Majority Leader.
Oh, my mistake. It was a very long time ago. I move the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. The only reason I remember is because it saves us a little bit of money. Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just joined the Majority Leader in moving the Appropriations Committee report and just commend the Appropriations Committee for appropriately appropriating the appropriations in this bill.
Which is a negative amount of money.
Yes, very appropriate, given the current
The unappropriated appropriately.
Thank you. The Appropriations Committee is very appropriate. All those in favor of the Appropriations Committee report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 214? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the bill. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 214 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 219?
Senate Bill 219 by Senators Fields and Sonnenberg and Representatives Valdez A. and Rich concerning the issuance of a lease purchase agreement found on the continuations of certain previously funded capital construction projects.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move Senate Bill 219 on second reading.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 219? Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, shoot. Oh, I'm up here too late without my mask. Members, this is about projects that we have in the middle. I've already started talking, it doesn't matter. In the middle of a project, for example, if you started building a house and you got the wood up but you don't have siding up, the damage that could be caused to that house. We have 3 of those projects that come from Capital Development Committee that could cost the state, the estimate is $7.5 million to $19.2 million if we don't do something to finish those projects and keep those projects from being exposed. Those projects are Fort Lewis Community College, the Anschutz at CU, and Shepherdson at CSU. Now, I know that may create some heartburn to spend money to kind of take care of this in this way, but from my perspective, this is a good business approach to make sure that we don't cost the state money down the stretch. Ask for your aye vote.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 219. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 28.
Senate Bill 28 by Senators Pedersen, Priola, and Representatives Benteo and Harrod concerning measures to assist an individual's recovery from a substance use disorder.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I move Senate Bill 28 and ask for an aye vote.
Please also move the Health and Human Services Committee report and the Appropriations Committee report. Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 28 and the Health and Human Services report and the Appropriations Committee report.
Do the Health and Human Services Committee report. Senator Pedersen.
Unfortunately, we've had to strip most of the work that we've done, and this is a much more narrowed version. I ask for your support.
Is there further discussion on the Health and Human Services Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we stripped the appropriation, the money involved per the fiscal note and appropriations. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Priola.
Thank you, members. This bill came out of the interim opioid and other substance use disorder committee. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 28? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the bill. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 28 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader, or Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
Senator Moreno. The Senate will come to order. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee will begs lead a report is that in consideration of the following tax bills being second read thereof makes the following recommendations. Number 1, Senate Bill 207 is amended, Senate Bill 210, Senate Bill 214 is amended, Senate Bill 219, Senate Bill 28 is amended, will pass second read order, gross place accounted for third reading and final passage.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 1 absent, and 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 207 as amended, Senate Bill 210, Senate Bill 214 as amended, Senate Bill 219, Senate Bill 028 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered and gross and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Leader.
Announcements, right? Yeah.
Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Finance Committee will be meeting in 15 minutes at Senate Committee Room 357. We will consider Senate Bill 218, Senate Bill 213, and House Bill 1343. Thank you.
Senator Foote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate State Affairs will be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment in the old Supreme Court chamber to consider 4 bills: House Bill 1002, House Bill 1347, SCR 02, SJR 22. That's 15 minutes upon adjournment in the old Supreme Court chamber.
Any other announcements? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we will be adjourning and let the committees do their work and let staff do their thing so they can get out of here as well. So, Mr. President, I move that the Senate adjourn until Monday, June 8th at 10 a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in adjournment until 10:00 hours on Monday, June 8th, 2020.